This is a show for grown-ups.
And they say bad words.
And they say bad words.
Say final warning.
Final warning.
Hello and welcome to the Pot of Blunders. I am your host, Nate Magnuski, and with me, as always, is Richard Sullivan.
Hello.
And with us, as last time, it's Eric from Ryan.
Is it Crumb Ryan or is it Crumb Ryan?
The jury is still out.
And did Matt get a last name since last time?
Nope. It's a state secret. You can't say it out loud, otherwise we'll stumble. Oh no!
Shit, he's here.
The wards, they do nothing.
Sorry about that.
Welcome back to the show, Matt. Not you, Eric. You know what you did. So, Richard, what the hell are we doing tonight? The last two episodes were our Masks actual play, and now we're here again, the four of us.
I enjoyed having everybody together the last time so much, but we were so busy playing games and, working that we just didn't get a chance to really talk to each other and really listen, you know?
Yeah.
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 Is this a listening thing?
Anyway,
I have to listen?
so what I was
I'm
going to
out.
say was...
So is this like a new in-between segment now? Because we always have in-betweens where we talk about different things. Eric, you've done an in-between with us before.
I plead the fifth.
He was in between us, I believe.
Yeah, you were the lucky Pierre that night. That's a technical term, right? That's cool for me to say.
Now, which one's the lucky Pierre?
The one in the middle. In-between. Come on.
Oh, no, I thought it was like a sex thing.
It is. It's
Yeah,
very much a sex
No,
thing.
but I thought it was like a position of the lucky Pierre, not the person.
The person in the middle is because they're getting penetrated and penetrating.
Right.
Yeah, but isn't
It's-
that the
you're
worst
you're the
person
Pierre
to
in
be-
the Eiffel Tower. That's what that is.
But isn't that the worst person to be in a human centipede?
This is a sex thing, not a human centipede thing.
What kind of sex are you having?
Don't ask it. Don't ask that question, Eric.
Listen, when a crazy German scientist
Nope.
invites you over...
God damn it. Okay. Well, thanks for coming to the last episode of the Pot of Blunders.
Come on, that's not even the worst thing I've ever said on this show.
No, it's not. In our normal in-between segments, we talk about shit that it's not an actual play, it's not an interview, it's something else we want to do. Whether it's a movie review or like covering some kind of topic about role-playing games. And Richard, you had the idea that we were going to start talking about some of our APs that we just had, so we could talk about the ideas behind it, what our thoughts are about the genre, that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, because it's way easier than prepping for a show.
Oh yeah, this is like free content. It's great. So we played Masks most recently, and let's see, Eric was Seb. His power was emotional manipulation and gadgetry, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had Matt, who was playing Vapor, whose power was gadgetry and being a total nerd. And then we
I had one
Richard.
other power when I remembered it.
Oh, what was it?
The phasing.
That's right, the phasing. You had cool trick arrows too.
Yeah.
Right, but
Yeah.
wasn't a power. That was part of his gadgetry, because didn't you hit a switch on your belt?
Maybe.
Sounds right. Let's go with a yes.
Yeah, I
go
took
with what
it
the
to
book
be like
said.
an Ant-Man button.
It was an Ant-Man button.
It was.
And then we had Boy Vengeance, who was played by Richard, who had the power of Ball Peen Hammer.
Yes.
I'm just curious, where did your idea for these characters come from? Richard, where did Boy Vengeance come from?
I've made no secret that Dick Grayson is my favorite comic character of all time. So I kind of wanted to do more of a Damian Wayne Robin mixed with Hit Girl. And I've always wanted to see what would happen to these people if they grew up in that screwed up environment. I mean, I don't think Batman's like that, but there's a run on All-Star Batman and Robin, and everyone thinks Frank Miller's the greatest Batman writer of all time, and he's a fucking hack, because for every Dark Knight Returns, you get an All-Star Batman and Robin where he essentially is just a crazy person who kidnaps a little boy and feeds him rats in the basement.
So he was basically trying to break this kid to become as broken
Yes.
as he was, to become a superhero?
Yes, and there's even the implication that he could have stopped the murder of his parents at the circus and didn't. It's fucked. So I thought, well, what if I went that direction?
Are you happy with how it came out? Do you feel like you captured that, your goal?
Yeah, I had some things in my backlog that didn't really get to come out, but maybe if we play it down the road, we could explore some of that. But yeah.
I mean, we left plenty open to be able to do that, so I'm interested in doing that again. And Matt, where did Vapor come from?
The part of the reason why I was like, yeah, it was phasing and not technology, because I kind of forgot first, is because growing up, one of my favorite superheroes, and still to this day, my favorite superhero is Kitty Pryde. I really enjoy the, like, using the Mask's term too, I guess, the more sort of mundane, grounded characters. You know, her whole thing was about, like, I'm not normal, this isn't normal, and at first, and I kind of like playing with that balance of the normal and the superhero. So I really wanted to play with that power set, first of all, because I love that. And the arrows just came from general RPGs and liking archery. And I'll admit I'm a Hawkeye fan as well. But it was coming from a place of trying to play an unlikely superhero who like wanted to just do their best, and also, you know, is sort of struggling with that whole real life thing.
Yeah, I love the evolution that we saw for Vapor. Like, he started off as completely this third string kind of background younger brother character. And by the end of it, he was like beaten to shit, phasing through things, like risking everything to be the hero. You know, I just want to continue our story just to see where he goes now. Like, what's next for Vapor?
Yeah, he's a character I could see more in the future for after issue 1.
Absolutely. And then we had Seb.
We did have Seb.
Dick.
Fucking dicks. Yeah, I think for me, when thinking about a character, I think I was in like a similar arena as Matt, with like kind of the X-Men vibes kind of thing. Like, so when I was younger, like in growing up, I didn't have access to comic books the way that I think a lot of like my nerd counterparts in this world did. Like, when people are talking about like, oh, issue blah blah blah, X-Men, whatever, like I never read those. Like, they weren't something my parents would buy for me. They, like, it was a investment that no one was willing to give. But X-Men the animated series was on TV, and I could watch that. And so, I mean, I've seen the whole series a couple times through, but like the Night of the Sentinels, Part 1, Part 2, opening episodes, like between Jubilee and Rogue and Storm, like those were my like go-tos. And I think when I was thinking of this character, it was kind of a Jubilee adjacent, but with more angst, and giving her some powers that weren't just like sparklers. Not to say she doesn't have powers, but I think that kind of a realm where it was, and even the look was kind of just like the way I described it was meant to be like a take on a Jubilee kind of character.
I'm glad you gave Seb better powers than what Jubilee has. Like, I always felt so fucking bad for Jubilee. Like, okay, this guy's got a metal skeleton, he can heal himself forever and get big ass claws. This lady controls fucking every aspect of weather, and you can like fry an arcade machine and wear a sweet trench coat.
She did kind of like blast the head off of a Sentinel, if I remember correctly.
It was already loose.
Storm loosened it for her.
Yeah.
So it's funny that Eric says that Jubilee and the 90s X-Men was his way in. My way into X-Men is, did you guys ever see Pride of the X-Men? All right, yes.
Yep.
The unaired pilot, which was actually the inspiration for the arcade game.
No, I never saw that.
Oh, look it up.
It was like this weird ragtag early 90s grouping of X-Men, which, like, with Dazzler, who, you know, was just Jubilee but effective.
Better, yeah.
Sorry, I love Jubilee's personality, but yeah, and it was
personality.
Yeah, she's got a great personality. Again, that was also part of where I fell in love with Kitty Pryde. It's like her introduction to the X-Men.
And we had an Australian Wolverine.
Yep.
In the brown suit, which I prefer over the yellow.
Yeah, the brown suit's great.
Whoa, what was that, Matt?
I said right? No, I like the brown suit over the yellow.
So we're unanimous. Pod of Blunders is a brown suit Wolverine podcast.
Yes. Eric abstains.
Sorry, Eric.
I haven't seen it, so I can't compare. But I'm partial to like the ridiculous outfits from the animated series. If that came out now, we would all describe it as like, oh, that's camp. But like, it was camp before it was like actually camp. But like, I don't know. There was something fun about this muscly man who could regenerate himself running around in yellow spandex with blades coming out of his hands. I don't know.
And Eric, what do you think about
Shut the fuck up. I'm talking. No,
asking about the reboot thing, goddammit.
No,
You can act smart.
No, I don't want
So wait, which reboot? Be more specific.
So, Eric, what do you think of the fact that they're actively animating and voicing X-Men 94 right now on Disney Plus? This should be out in the next year or so.
I'm one of those people, like, I'm always excited when they bring in, like, they revisit old content and give it to us in like a different lens or a different perspective, while like recognizing that it might not be for me, and that's okay. Like, they're making some of these animated things. Like, I love when people are like when they rebooted Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it's like, my childhood's ruined. Like, no, your childhood's still intact. It's over there. Like, just go watch it. Like, it's fine. So like, I'm always excited to see what they do with some of those things. The animated series was great, and then when the first set of the movies came out, for me, those were, I think, crucial and kind of my, I don't know, identity as like a nerd and somebody who enjoyed comics, because even though it wasn't, and this has been talked about many times with like the X-Men, like even though it wasn't explicit, like these are gay undertones, like they were gay under, like the scene of Iceman sitting in the room with his parents being like, I'm a mutant, and they respond with, have you ever tried not being a mutant? I had that conversation with my mother, where I'm like, I'm gay, and she's like, have you tried not?
That's
and I'm
mutant
like,
power.
Yeah, it's my mutant power. I'm very good at it. But like, those parallels, I think in 2022, like if that came out, people were like, oh yeah, that's definitely like gay subtext. Why can't it just be openly gay, et cetera, et cetera? But like in like 2001, when I was like struggling with identity and who I was as a person, to have that parallel on a screen was exciting for me.
It was crazy too, because like in the 60s when the X-Men came out, it was all about being akin to the civil rights movement, and then how that kind of shifted over the years.
Yeah, Professor X was MLK, Magneto was Malcolm X, at his most vehemently, separatist.
That's fair.
It's interesting to see another minority group take up that flag and run with it and identify with it so strongly. It's a powerful, enduring thing to be able to be that for so many different people.
It was he's the bad Brian. Brian Singer is the bad one.
Who's the good Brian?
Well, like, because Brian Fuller is also like is a good guy. Like, Brian Singer has a lot of like issues surrounding him, but like him being a gay person, writing some of that into the shows that he was directing, and maybe he couldn't like put that into the actual movie itself, but the way you kind of cake it in with the things that are going on around people. Again, he's not great. He's trash, but he did make that shift in, and I think some of what the X-Men felt like for folks.
And he made one good X-Men movie. No, two. He made two good X-Men movie.
Yeah.
Which ones?
X2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Days of Future Past.
I love Days of Future Past. I love that movie.
Which, coincidentally, we were talking with Matt about earlier today. He said that Kitty Pryde was his person, about how Days of Future Past should have been Kitty Pryde. Like, it should have been her going back into the past based on...
I want to talk about it.
But instead, we got Wolverine, because we can't have X-Men without Wolverine being central somehow.
Yeah. I feel like every modern reboot of X-Men has to have an audience surrogate. And I think Kitty Pryde is a lot of it for right now. I think Jubilee was it in the 90s.
Well, it was definitely Rogue in the Singer movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's always that. Is it always a young woman? I mean, we had Iceman, too.
I mean, I don't know if Iceman ever, well, at least like in the movies, I don't know if Iceman ever rose to that for me as like an entry point. I will be curious if when the MCU starts launching into X-Men, what characters they choose to introduce, because Iceman is now canonically gay. So maybe the MCU will finally give us our quote first openly gay character for the third time.
What have the other contenders been for that title?
Endgame, in like the support group scene where he's like, I went on a date, he cried, I cried, and then we got dessert. And like they sold that as like, this is our like big gay character in the MCU.
Wow, what a forgettable role.
Are
you happy now?
What a small scene that can be edited out for an international audience is what you mean to say.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm guessing that doesn't play well everywhere, huh?
Well, I thought Phastos was the first like major character, right? Or am I missing one?
I think so.
Wait, what came out first, Eternals or Loki? Because Loki canonically is now bi.
When that happened?
I don't know. It's all been during the pandemic. It's all
no. I mean, but what did he do that was?
They like literally like straight up asked. They like were talking and was like, "Oh, I bet you've had many women in your lives," and then something about like maybe men too, and he was like, "Yeah, a little bit of both." Like it was a moment you could edit out.
I guess that slipped right past me.
It was like a throwaway line on the train, I think, right? Him and his clone, or his other version.
Yeah.
But to be fair, he did want to fuck himself the whole show, so.
And he did, right? Didn't they? No?
No, they didn't. They should have.
They should have.
Next season.
It's not weird.
Well, what would happen if two Lokis had sex and then had a Loki baby with your variant?
Probably something about the time space collapsing and everything falling apart.
Yeah. Still, worth it. We'd all have sex with our clone, right? I mean, like, you'd have to.
And there's a difference between clone and variant, because clone is the same. Like, clone is literally you, but like the variant, I mean, Loki variants, there's a whole bunch of them.
I've done worse than myself, let me tell you.
I feel like we've segued a long way off from like angsty teen superheroes to now like having sex with our variants.
It's a simple question, Eric. Yes or no? Would you fuck your variant?
It depends on the variant.
It's
not
a
all those
crocodile.
Loki variants were hot. I wouldn't fuck that. I wouldn't fuck the crocodile.
Okay, wow. Kind of defensive, Eric. Just saying. This is a safe place. We can talk about fucking our fictional crocodile variants. It's fine. No one listens to our show anyway. No one will find out. So I think Richard is the only one of the four of us that grew up as a DC fan more than a Marvel fan. Is that accurate? Like, I feel like your characters represented that pretty well too. Where Richard fucking murked a guy with a ball-speed hammer.
Oh, come on. There's nobody in Marvel that would have done that? Nah, I liked them both. I think as an adult, I appreciate DC more, but I liked them both. I was equally as into Spider-Man and Batman.
You were more of an IDW fan, right?
Of course. No, actually, not
Dark Horse.
I was going to say Dark Horse because I had a ton of the Alien comics and Predator comics. For me, I like the representation of DC characters as modern gods as opposed to a bunch of science nerds over on Marvel. Like, I'm not a religious person. You know, I'm not into faith, but I can appreciate Superman and what that represents more than I can a Christ figure. Like, and to me, they're just that modern equivalent that 1,000 years from now, maybe they'll be talking about Superman the way they talk about Zeus. You know what I mean?
Like someone, do you think after like some apocalypse will find an omnibus of Superman comics and be like, the word of the Lord. If you're up there, please save us, Superman.
I'm not a prank.
And your holy mother, Martha.
Why'd you say that name?
Just...
No, I don't think it'll go that far, but just, I mean, any superhero for that matter, like, you see it on every kid's backpack and it means something.
I always wonder, like, okay, the old school gods, like you said, the Greek gods, were they more like heroic figures to look up to, or were they something more like, no, these are the lightning bolt throwing forces of nature? Or was it some kind of mix where people
I think they
understood,
were to be
like,
feared for sure.
So they weren't entertainment? Because, like, I mean, there was a fine line, I feel, between like some of the sagas and the Eddas, like the stories about these characters and the worship of them. Like, we have hero worship in our society, you know, but we don't think of them as gods. I wonder where that change took place. Like, I feel like almost all literature back in the day was centered around a deity of sorts, or the storytelling was for a purpose. It wasn't just for entertainment.
I don't know. You're the literature major.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Nice.
it's stupid to have competition. Who's better? Like, who cares? We love them both.
No, Marvel's better. It's not even particularly close. This is the part where you have a fucking debate and you yell at each other and make some like entertaining content, not just say no and be quiet.
No, because I just think it's
Yes,
stupid.
and
Marvel is better, but that's just, I mean, Richard can be wrong and that's fine.
See, but I agree with Richard where I feel like that's like not a thing that you should say on the show for some reason. But I agree with Richard.
You get put on a list for that type of shit.
I know. While I'm still a huge Marvel fan, I came to appreciate DC more growing up. I think when I was in college, and weirdly enough, I didn't like Superman at all growing up, but I read, oh my God, what's the name of it? Hush. And I fell in love with the Rogues Gallery of that. And I started like diving deep into it at that point. And now Dick Grayson's my favorite DC character as well. For a couple of reasons, I'm sure Eric can also attest to. Yeah, no, I think that an appreciation for DC and some of like the themes and the ways that they approach things came a little further along in my life, but like Marvel's definitely always going to be home. So I can see that. I can empathize with that.
So your favorite character of all time, Matt, is Shadowcat
Or Sprite.
Sprite,
Or
okay.
or Ariel or yes.
Richard,
But
yours
also-
is. No, shut the fuck up, Eric. No, go ahead.
But also, like, I think, and I wonder if my part of my like, I really enjoy Marvel a lot more, and I found more home with it, as Matt was saying, is also because of the way that I've consumed like comic book media, which has mostly been through like TV shows and movies, where Superman has literally done nothing for me ever. I mean, yes, Henry Cavill does things for me, but like Superman, the character, I find boring. Like it's a I don't know. Well, one, like we beat the story to death over and over and over again, and we keep retelling it over and over and over again. But like, there's very little I find interesting about him, and maybe that's a little bit more of the overwhelming efforts that Superman goes to like assimilate into culture. Whereas like the homes that I have found in comic movies and comic book lore has been more about people finding themselves and appreciating the outskirts that they are in. So like the X-Men being very like, yeah, fuck it, like I'm Mystique, I'm blue, like I can't change that. Like, I mean, she can. Bad example.
I was like, isn't that her power?
I'm blue. But like, I don't know. I think what I've gotten from DC has been a lot of like the themes that are in it have not ever resonated for me, aside from like some very specific niche things of like the Harley Quinn animated series. Like that is top tier television, but it's not the normal, I think, DC story that is told in a lot of the media or like through movies and television.
I feel like the DC cartoons are on par with Marvel stuff. I feel like a lot of the live action movies are not. You know, I don't know if it's just a lack of talent around it, or they don't know how to tell the stories, so they're trying to make them something they're not. But you look at some of the like the animated superhero or Superman movies, like Injustice, incredible.
No, when you talk about not finding Superman interesting, he can do everything, but it's what he can't do.
Like pet a kitten, he would just explode that little guy.
Oh,
wow! Like toothpaste with fur. Like,
he can do that, but there's one, I think it's Doom or Apocalypse. I can't remember which one. The one with Supergirl. And he fights Darkseid at the end, and he looks at him and he's like, my entire life I've had to walk in a world of cardboard. I can't touch things. I'm afraid of pulling my punches. But you, big boy, you can take it. And he finally just has somebody to unleash on, and it's so cathartic for him. And to me, that's Superman.
So what are your thoughts about how they had, like in the radio show, basically, he had no vulnerabilities. It was just him kicking the shit out of people over and over and over again. And finally, it was in the comics originally. He had no vulnerabilities.
The radio introduced kryptonite.
Yeah. So I think that was the thing that saved Superman for a lot of people. Because no one wants to hear the story of a god that's invincible, just beating the fuck out of everybody without any chance of dying. Well, you want to have him have some kind of vulnerability.
Right, but what everyone also overlooks, he's also highly susceptible to magic. So any of the magic users in DC would whoop his ass.
That's my favorite sentence I think you've ever said.
What?
Everyone overlooks he's susceptible to magic. I don't know. Just crack me up.
We run a D&D role-playing podcast. I'm not allowed to say Superman is highly susceptible to magic?
No, it wasn't that you said it. It was the way in which you said it with such authority. I don't know, it kind of did something for me. I appreciated it. But in the comics, it wasn't like, oh, and here comes Mr. Mitchell Spitlick, and he's going to dimension door Superman into non-existence. It was like, oh, and then he punches the little guy to death, and it's the end. He's a superhero, yay. And finally, they were like, here's kryptonite. Now, there's some weird shit they did with kryptonite that was not always savory.
The red, the yellow,
the pink.
Turns him gay.
It does. As canon.
Sure is.
I think the most interesting stories of Superman are the ones where, like, they show his vulnerability not physical, but, like, Jimmy Olsen gets killed. Or Lois Lane gets killed, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
Mom and Pop Kent are at risk. Because you can't hurt the Man of Steel, but his feelings can be hurt. He's vulnerable that way.
Well, that's what I love in the 78 movie. His dad just dies of a heart attack. And it's like you have all the strength, the speed in the world. Can't save that. Better
the Flash
than a fucking tornado.
What if you flew around the world so fast, the stop spinning went backwards?
I always
Oh,
hated
so
that.
you mean every plot line on every season of the CW Flash show?
I need to be faster.
So
yeah, this guy's wicked fast, though. Oh,
yeah,
no.
but I need
And
to
that
be
was something I
faster
was
than
just
him.
I generally do appreciate the DC CW. Aside from Arrow, I enjoy like all the rest of them. I think it's something about like an affluent white guy who just runs around and is like, I'm a vigilante, look at my bow and arrow and how I'm super wealthy and a playboy. And he's just Batman with a green outfit. But like the rest of them are all very like angsty teens. Literally, the Flash is every season ending up back in time somehow to fix a thing he did, and like the team dynamics that they build up are always, I think, more fun for me than like some of the Superman and some of the others that we've got. But yeah, if you want to talk about like some teen angst, the DC CW shows are chock full of some of that.
Flash started off good, but like after season like 3, it just lost me.
Oh, I stuck on for way too long.
No, but that was the finale of what, the first season? Fucking wrecked me.
Oh, was that with? Yeah.
Oh.
You can give spoilers now. It's okay. It's been like 6 years. So what happened at the end of season 1? Is that the one with his dad? Or was that with his mom? She was like, it's cool.
Well, everyone thinks his dad killed his mom. No, because he remembers seeing his mom die as a kid, and he saw what he thought was a speedster there.
Yeah.
Only to come to find out it was him, and he had to let his mother die to save, I forget why exactly, but basically to save time itself. And it was just fucking heartbreaking.
I think the stories about superheroes that don't have it together and that fuck up are just far more fun. Because nobody, like, again, I keep harkening back to this, but nobody wants to hear about. And here's a story about a guy who has it all together and nothing goes wrong for him. The end. Like, there's no drama there. When you have, like, a kid with all the impulse control issues a kid has, and then you give him, like, a gun you can't put away, pretty much, all the time. Like, I want to watch that. It's like a monkey with a hand grenade. You know it's going to go bad, but you're going to watch. I think Young Justice is probably the best example of teen superheroes in media. I love that fucking show.
Over Teen Titans? Oh, you were talking just like TV shows?
Yeah. And just the TV shows and just cartoons. I mean, Teen Titans Go is awesome. I love Teen Titans Go. But for a show that's actually like moving and just it depicts the characters so human, you know? Nothing can beat it. Nothing. Even my beloved 1994 X-Men, which is more of a soap opera that happened to be animated.
But it also gave us Storm just shouting things to the monorail. Like, sure. And like all of her like lines of like when she used her powers and like the like absurdity of whatever it was that she was shouting, that was roughly on par with like Mr. Freeze and Batman and Robin. Like, that's like her lines were on par with that. She just had a better delivery than Arnold Schwarzenegger did.
I don't remember. Did she make puns? Because I just remember her, like, if she was going to have a lightning storm, she'd just say, lightning, which she never did in the comics.
She would say these, like, big things. I have to go back and, like, revisit some of them. And maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe it's just, like, my brain wants Storm to have said punny things.
I think you're thinking of the awful Holly Berry line in the first movie, which is what happens when a toad is struck by lightning.
The same thing that happens to everything else.
Which I guess was like cut scenes that was like going to be like a recurring thing, so that when that came
toad
up,
getting zapped by lightning.
Or just everything was like, what happens when this gets hit by lightning, or what happens when this happens? The same as everything else. And it was supposed to, it was that lame.
What
and
a
I guess
weird
it got cut out with
catchphrase.
that big ending got left in. It's the worst thing Bryan Singer's ever done.
Like on film.
Well,
yeah, that's a good clarification.
Richard knows what he said.
Stand by it.
I will say I'm a little shocked just because we played Masks. I'm a little shocked X-Men Evolution hasn't come up, but maybe that was like before or after some people's times. But like that to me was sort of quintessentially what I was thinking of when I was like approaching Masks, because that was like prime teen angst mixed with superpowers.
Yeah, I missed all that.
Goth Rogue.
What if Raven, but Rogue?
But was still better than Anna Paquin Rogue.
Yeah,
but
it's not a high barrier to hit, you know? And the show that I don't really hear spoken of a lot, but it was awesome when it was on TV, was Static Shock.
Oh, yeah.
That tackled some like real world shit, and it did it well. Like better than most modern shit does. I say modern, like it was in 2002 or whatever the fuck it came out in, but it tackled like racism a lot. It tackled like all that kind of shit, and it did it so well and so gracefully that it was actually like impactful. Did you see the episode where he stepped over his white friend's house for the first time, and his white friend's dad is like a fucking horrible racist? And so the dad's going off like, oh, you know, that's why we don't allow rap in this house. He's a bad influence. He's a, you know, thug and all this kind of shit. Mm-hmm. And like, he hears this and he's like, well, fuck that. And he walks. You see his reaction to like, I don't know how to handle my best friend growing up in this household. And then you see it from the best friend's perspective, like, I don't know how to relate to my friend that's not me. And for a cartoon aimed at like 11-year-olds to do that and do that well, to make the lessons entertaining and digestible, incredible stuff.
Well, it got lumped in with like all those other cartoons at the time, like Freakazoid and stuff like that, where it was like sort of in the same lineup, where it was just like everyone was like, "Oh, this is just a really silly like cartoon." But yeah, no, you're right. I remember there being a lot of messages in there that were really potent, still are.
It holds up. I watched it again recently, just a couple episodes, and I'm like, "Yep, this is still relevant." It's cheesy. A lot of it's very much, 2000, early 2000s. It feels like it. The messages hold and are sadly still relevant. It's probably why they're so enduring. People think about it. X-Men have been from the 60s. Batman was what, late 30s, early 40s?
Mm-hmm.
And today the characters are still relevant and as popular as ever, if not more popular than ever, because the social issues they're addressing are still here. Also, they're really fucking cool.
Well, plus, dude, they also, because they're so old, they change with the times.
Yeah.
Like, people lost their fucking mind. Was it last year, the year before, when Tim Drake came out as bi in the comics, and people lost their fucking mind. Or when Superman's kid came out. Oh, hey, we're turning Superman gay. It's like, you're not turning anybody gay. It's a new character who's gay.
Right.
Big fucking deal. But people lost their goddamn minds.
And so these assholes who haven't read a comic in like 30 years. They're like, my Superman wouldn't do that. It's like, this isn't your Superman.
Right.
This is this kid. Let this kid be a different person. Fuck.
I mean, and as well as like, I think I always like, I mean, obviously I appreciate when we get those kinds of characters and when we get fun takes on different things. I'm excited for the next phase of Marvel where potentially we're getting with Scarlet Witch's kids, but Wiccan is canonically gay, who falls in love with Hulking. I'm excited for that because like that's a character that's like kind of been brought in under that auspice. But I also like representation should be out there. We should have character everything else. Like it is exhausting every time that there is a character that is like queer identified in some way that maybe canonically wasn't queer identified before, because then we're gonna spend the next 2 weeks debating how much like we destroy that character, we ruined somebody's story, woke blah blah blah, and like everything else. And like you just have to sit back and you're like, I'm like, people are just trying to exist, and like sometimes people are gay, and like how are we still revisiting this over and over again? Like whatever character you fell in love with still exists and is over there somewhere. Like this is for another generation of people to enjoy this media in a way that is more inclusive. But I think there's like a level of exhaustion I think you hit as somebody who identifies with one of those like marginalized identities that is constantly debated, because I see areas like Marvel pushing that a little bit more, trying to push it as much as they can, like with Eternals, like giving us that character and fully recognizing that that movie could not premiere in China. I mean, the director also said a bunch of stuff that like, she was like, fuck them. I don't want to be over there. Like she had a lot of political views on things, but like, that they're willing to do that and not have it be like editable out for once. And that one didn't cause as much debate. And I'm guessing it's because people didn't like Eternals as much. And they were focused on like other, I don't know, that movie was one. And maybe it's again because of the content in it, but like collectively people just seem to like it a lot less.
Because it wasn't very good.
I mean, we can all have our wrong opinions, and that's fine, Richard. To have it not only be a queer person, but to have it be a queer Black man who was in a relationship with a non-white man, and like that all was huge, and barely had a conversation about it, which I also think was interesting.
You think it was a good thing that they were like, this is just how he is, and that's the background fact, and it's not the central aspect of everything we talk about him?
I think it goes back to the fact that people were more just ragging on the movie in general, and it was one of those things where like it wasn't even worth it to like have the conversation, because they're just like, well, it's this woman who did this movie about blah, 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 blah. It's so woke and terrible and whatever. And we're just not even going to bother talking about this other character.
Well, plus, too, if there wasn't also like 20 fucking characters in the movie, you could have focused more on them.
We're about to have like a throwdown debate about how Eternals was good or bad.
No, and I hate to say, like what I said earlier about like the difference between Marvel and DC, what's better. It doesn't matter. Because like, as much as I don't like that movie, somewhere out there, it's some kid's favorite fucking movie. Like every bad movie is somebody's favorite movie.
Mm-hmm.
So if some kid out there sees like a Fastos and is like, oh, cool, like a gay black dude who kicks ass, and that's like what gets him into the genre, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't Morbius.
No. Nothing should ever be Morbius. It's the lowest bar to clear you've ever had. It's a bar so low you could trip over it, not realize what it was. Like, I think so much media is written for the straight white middle-aged dude.
Mm-hmm.
When you have something that's written for, like Captain Marvel was written for women, and you go, well, I didn't like it. You don't have to. It's not for you, and that's fine. Not everything has to be for Richard and I, despite my chagrin and constant complaints about it.
But I still liked it.
That's not for you. You can't.
I can like
what I just say.
Like, I loved Wonder Woman. I'm not a woman.
Which
but
one?
The first one. The second one was trash.
Was trash.
But again, somebody's favorite movie, I'm sure. Some cat lady. I still get goosebumps with that No Man's Land scene. But I don't have to be a woman to appreciate it, because she's just a hero. Woman, man, doesn't matter. She's a hero.
That was a good scene.
It was a great scene.
I didn't like the main bad guy because it was just like a sad English guy.
It was David Thewlis with a helmet.
I wasn't afraid of him. He looked like Nigel Thornberry. I say Wonder Woman smashing. It's like, God, no one wants to see this.
Oh, God.
He was in one of them Harry Potters, wasn't he? He was the
Probably.
werewolf
I
guy.
I think at this point, like, all British people were contractually obligated to be in like one Harry Potter movie at some point during their tenure. But I also don't want to talk about Harry Potter because that'll just make me angry, and that's a whole different episode of a podcast.
When we play Kids on Brooms, we'll talk about Harry Potter after that.
Okay. And Eric will not be invited.
Oh no, I will, but I'll just like burn it all down from the inside.
We'll just all mute ourselves and let Eric have his hour. Just be like, and another thing. Fuck that turf. Fuck her stupid shit. Fuck her weird rich people school for wizards and witches. Fuck the regular train that goes there for some reason. It's a regular fucking train. Stupid and I hate it. Fucking regular ass train. Wow, it's a griffin. Oh, a dragon. And look, a regular ass train. Like, who fucking cares? It's a train.
It wasn't even a regular train. It was an out of date old train.
Ooh, how mystical. Fuck trains. Fuck that stupid movie. Fuck the magic. Fuck Hogwarts.
Oh, my kid's reading and watching them now, and
Fuck you. Oh no, he's fine.
Wow.
they're just wrapped up in the magic of it all, you know.
He'll learn. Come sit next to Uncle Lee. I gotta tell you what a turf is.
Here's the thing, and maybe I can recognize that she's probably a shit person.
There's no probably about it, homie.
No, but like most people, if you really get to know them, are shit. Like most musicians, oh, they're so wonderful. Like Johnny Cash, right? Love Johnny Cash, but he was a terrible father, a terrible husband. But oh, he's this legend, dude. People suck, but the art, I can separate the two, and that's kind of tricky sometimes.
I'm gonna step on a soapbox for 30 seconds.
Go for it.
Because Richard said a thing that is setting me off. So you separate like art and an artist. As somebody who is a writer and trying to be somebody who does writing in the world, I really struggle with the idea of like you can separate the art from the artist, because when the end of the day comes around, you look at the art the person has created, they are creating it from their point of view and the world that they live in and the views that they hold. And that gets caked into the stuff that they do. Like, that's why you have an Asian woman whose name is Cho Chang. She literally has two last names instead of an actual name. Like, that's why you have all of her minority characters all have, like, stereotyping names. It's why Dumbledore being gay was, like, an afterthought somewhere else because it was good for marketing. Like, it's so hard to really separate those. And I think the way that I will also frame this is I think it's easier when you are not somebody who is directly impacted by the actions that the artist has taken, to be able to say, I can separate myself from the art that someone is creating because it hasn't caused harm to you or people that are necessarily like, I'll leave it to you. Like, it has not caused harm to like you in some way. Whereas like for me, looking at J.K. Rowling and the ongoing active harm that she is causing to trans people in like the global community, and the way in which we are seeing an uprise in anti-gay legislation in the United States, and the way we're seeing an uprising in the way in which people are approaching queer people in America. Like, I just read some thread of a story about this guy, like two guys who had an adopted child, and some man on a train like accosted them and like told the child that like they were in danger and that their dads were terrible people. So like for me, like all of that, I can't separate those things, because she's so actively harmful that like she is that universe and she is that author and she created that space. And there, like when you go through and like look back over her work, like you can find spaces in there where you're like, this feels a little racist, this feels a bit sexist, this feels that. And like I don't know. I really struggle with that idea of like I can and you can still like I think there's still ways where it's like I remember watching Harry Potter for the first time and like what impact that had on me in a positive way. But I don't have that anymore as somebody who's trying to enjoy that media. I'll leave the like my roommate loves watching the movies. Like I'll just straight up walk out the room because I can no longer find enjoyment in that.
I was reading an article with an interesting parallel between like Lovecraft fans and Rowling fans. Both authors
yes.
terribly problematic, but Lovecraft is fucking dead. He doesn't benefit anymore from actively like talking about his shit. Did he do despicable, horrible, racist shit even for his time? Yes. What was this cat named? You can't say it on this podcast.
Don't look it up.
Fuck out.
Don't look it up. Don't say it.
Well, he's dead. So now you have the opportunity to be like, okay, we're going to take some of his ideas that he put forth, some of the foundational work he wrote, and like reclaim it and change it. Like there's a horror anthology about Red Hook where it's told from like the minority perspective in that area. And it's all Lovecraftian in theme, but he's not benefiting from it. So it's cool to enjoy it again. You can separate that. But Eric, I understand your point of like with Rowling, she's actively benefiting and actively still causing harm with her shit. Maybe once she's dead and people can go, like we have some distance and we can kind of fuck around with her world a little more. Like what's the new video game they have coming out with the Harry Potter shit?
I think it's Hogwarts Legacy.
And I know like they actively have stuff in that game that's like pro-trans because they're trying to like make it its own thing because they realize some people are just not going to fucking touch this game with a 10-foot pole. Whereas other people like Richard maybe would have no problem with it because it's not. I'm not putting words in Richard's mouth. I don't want to, like Richard's cool with fucking that. Like I don't know, but
the Fantastic Beasts movies right now are tanking because of how one because they've had tons of issues with cast members between like Johnny Depp and then Ezra Miller recently causing problems at a resort in Hawaii, physically assaulting people for singing karaoke. That's a real thing that happened in the past.
I thought he assaulted people by his karaoke. Like it was just that.
Oh, no. People were singing Shallow by Lady Gaga and he went to their hotel room and physically assaulted them.
What the fuck? That's horrible.
What?
See, I read it. I just thought he was like drunk at a karaoke bar. I didn't know there was more to it. That's the Flash, man. He can't do that.
He was like Banshee just screaming at people.
But between that and then J.K. Rowling just being J.K. Rowling and box office numbers have not been like progressively gotten worse for each movie. Last thing I read was that they haven't started working on the fourth movie in any capacity because they're waiting to see how movie 3 does, and they're actually anticipating it's not going to do well.
Are they any good objectively? Like I haven't seen any of them.
I saw the first one. I think I remember it being like fine.
All right.
I was gonna say I haven't heard anything like sterling about them in general, to be fair. So like their quality also might just not be great. But
to me, it reminds me of like Gotham is to Batman. It's like, oh, you like this world? You love Harry Potter and you like all the adventures at Hogwarts? Well, it's kind of like that, except none of that's in it. And there's a guy named Dumbledore, but he doesn't have a beard. So I think that's why it's not doing well, because it's not what people want.
And then also like
people want the Cursed Child. They don't want Fantastic Beasts.
Well, and also the gay love story that they're supposed to be having. The boyfriend turns into a fascist. So like that's a weird arc for queer people in fantasy to have. Doesn't feel warm and fuzzy on the inside. Our only representation in this world is Dumbledore, who isn't out in any of the movies, and then his jilted ex-lover who turns into a fascist.
In my mind, gays can do anything the straights can do. And that includes becoming a fascist dictator. I'm more of an egalitarian, Eric, I think. I believe in you. If you want to become a fascist, you can do it as good as any straight guy.
I mean, I don't know. I feel motivated now. I feel believed in.
Matt, you get out there, goddammit. And
you know what? I gotta go. I have stuff to do.
You go oppress people. You can do it. C is the means of production.
I do think that there is to semi go back to like the second tangent that went into this. I do think that there is something to be said because like I have a lot of friends who like, for instance, Harry Potter, enjoy it, who are like, well, I can't really enjoy the media going forward, but how do I like deal with the fact that like I grew up with this, kind of like Eric said, like I grew up with this had positive things in my life. This helped me feel this way about life. It helped me through a lot. I think there's something about like separating maybe not the artist from the art, but the art from the nostalgia or from like the like personal impact that it had. Like, you can still take that personal impact, and you can take those messages that you took that are positive and hang on to that. But like, I don't begrudge my friends for being like, you know what, I love Harry Potter, it meant all this stuff to me, etc., etc. Do I side-eye them? Absolutely. Like, if the revolution comes, whatever, I'll be like, let's have some conversations. But like, I can't begrudge people. Like, I grew up as a Ender's Game was one of my favorite books growing up. Orson Scott Card is trash. Like,
oh yeah.
As a person, Orson
Garbage
Scott
human
Card,
being.
garbage human. But like, I still remember the positive stuff that I took from that. And like, I can still sit here and go like, okay, I got some messages from it. Am I going to like throw him in my top 8 on MySpace? Absolutely not. But like, am I going to sit there and be like, yeah, this is what I got from this? Like, sure. I think that there's something about like the meanings that we took from it when we were in like troubled parts of our lives, because we all have troubled parts of our lives at that point, honestly, and still do. Let's just put that out there. You can have both conversations, in my opinion.
Love you, Matt. You're like the moderate. You're like, me and Eric are like fire and ice, and you're like the lukewarm water.
Which is funny how, because the dynamic of that worked very differently in Masked, where it was like you guys were like fire and gasoline, and I was still the moderate, but in a very different way. I need you to know, side note, my friends listened to this podcast. Some people did listen to it. I'm just making sure that you know that ahead of time. But my friend said she's had 2 comments, and she said, 1, I laughed really hard in my office, and I probably shouldn't have been listening to it there. And 2, Boy Vengeance is a problem. But she said that she loved the way that everyone interacted, and she loved Boy Vengeance, but she was like, he is a capital all caps problem.
Well, I think he's kind of supposed to be, so I'm going to take it as a compliment, I think.
Oh yeah, no, it was meant complimentarily. That was the one very specific comment.
Like all of the characters, he's got some shit he has to work through.
Yeah, he's a big Rowling fan.
There was no books in the Vindicator's lair except for the Harry Potter books.
And as he brought the ball peen hammer down, he yelled Avada Kedavra.
Cruciatus! Smack, 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 smack. Don't worry, boy. For your birthday, I got you a library. It's just 9 copies of the Sorcerer's Stone. What the fuck?
Actually, it's the Philosopher's Stone in England.
I almost said that. Stop. No.
I run a role-playing game podcast, and I'm looking at you down my nose. You fucking nerds. So what do you think is next for our intrepid heroes? You want to play Masks again?
Seb would definitely come back and do another round of some sort of wacky adventure. I mean, we left with like a bit of a cliffhanger anyways.
Yeah, that's right. We had Vapor's boyhood hero of Makeshift was the mover and shaker behind it all. He was
Oh my god, that's still killing me. I literally, as I re-listened to the first episode, I was like, oh my god. How could I have been so naive?
Yeah, I'm glad that worked out because I didn't have a way to end that episode, so it all worked.
Great.
Yeah, I saw that coming a mile away.
I didn't, because I made it up really at the end. I'm like, how am I going to do this? Because I was just going to have you beat the dinosaur guy and be like, okay, cool, good job, end of episode. And I was like, I'm having fun. Twist time. And it all worked out. But today, I listened to episode 2, so this will come out after episode 2 is publicly available. And I got to say, I liked it. We did a good job, guys. We did it.
Let's pat ourselves on the back. Good job, everybody.
Yay. Who's the best? Us guys. Tonight we are all lucky, Pierre.
And that's all for this week's episode. Sorry about my voice. I just got out of PAX, and I might have overdone it a little bit. So there. Thanks again to Eric and Matt for coming on the show and talking to us about superheroes and all that kind of fun stuff. Make sure you follow the links in the show notes for Eric's and Matt's Twitch streams. They do a really fun content. Their communities are growing rapidly, and it's well deserved. They're a lot of fun. It was great meeting so many of you at PAX East this past weekend. I really feel like the real convention was of friends you made along the way. And if you want to keep being our friends, follow the other links in the show notes to our Discord, to our website, potofblunders.com, and maybe even to become a patron over at patreon.com/potofblunders. I am in desperate need of a nice warm tea and a nice warm bed. And so, without further ado, I will say, for the pot of blunders, I've been Nate Magnuski, and as always, may all your D's be 12s.